The rain pattered against my apartment window, each drop creating a symphony of melancholy that matched my mood. I sat at my small kitchen table, bills spread before me like tarot cards predicting a bleak future. The yellow light above buzzed intermittently, threatening to plunge me into darkness at any moment, much like everything else in my life lately. "Mommy, I'm hungry," came Lily's small voice from the doorway of our tiny living room. Her brown curls were tangled from sleep, her favorite stuffed rabbit dragging on the floor behind her. "I know, baby. Dinner's almost ready." I forced a smile, quickly shuffling the overdue notices into a pile and sliding them under a placemat. 5 years old, and already she could read the worry on my face better than she could read her alphabet books. The pasta boiled on our second-hand stove. The third meal this week made from the same box of spaghetti and the last jar of sauce. Payday wasn't until Friday, and today was only Tuesday. I stirred the pot, watching the noodles swirl in the bubbling water while calculating how to stretch $27 for 3 more days. I hadn't always lived like this. 3 years ago, before Lily's father disappeared with our savings and left me with a mountain of debt and a 2-year-old to raise alone, I'd been finishing my nursing degree. Now I worked double shifts at Mercy Hospital as an aide, making barely enough to keep our heads above water. "Tell me a story while we wait," Lily said, climbing onto a chair and resting her chin on her hands. I separated the pasta into 2 portions, giving her the larger one. "Which story, sweetie?" "The one about the prince who saves the princess from the tower." My throat tightened. I'd created those fairy tales when the reality of her father abandoning us became too painful to explain to a toddler. In my stories, he wasn't a coward who stole our money and ran off with a cocktail waitress. He was a noble prince sent on a dangerous mission, who would return someday to rescue us both. "Once upon a time," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "there was a beautiful princess who lived in a tall tower with her little princess daughter. Later, after tucking Lily into bed in our 1-bedroom apartment, I slept on the pull-out couch. I allowed myself to cry silently in the bathroom, water running to mask the sound. Tomorrow, I needed to meet with the apartment manager about the late rent. Again. The hospital had cut back my hours, and I'd already pawned everything of value months ago. My reflection stared back at me from the cracked mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, pale skin, and the faint remnant of what used to be called beauty. At 28, I felt decades older, worn down by constant worry and exhaustion. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane, a nurse I worked with. "Emergency shift tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., 2 p.m. Interested?" My fingers couldn't type "yes" fast enough. The extra hours would mean Lily would have to go to Mrs. Patel next door instead of preschool, but the money would cover groceries for another week. Morning came too quickly. I left Lily, still sleepy-eyed and clutching her rabbit, with our kind neighbor, promising to pick up her favorite apple juice on my way home. Mercy Hospital bustled with the controlled chaos I'd grown accustomed to. The emergency room had been busy overnight. A car accident had brought in several patients, and we were short-staffed as usual. "Elena, take these charts to room 3, then help Dr. Weston in Trauma 1, Diane instructed, handing me a stack of files. I hurried down the corridor, nearly colliding with 2 men in expensive suits standing outside room 3. They moved with a synchronicity that made me instinctively step back, like trained guard dogs. Both wore earpieces and had the watchful stillness of people accustomed to looking for threats. "Excuse me," I murmured, trying to slide past them. Neither responded verbally, but one shifted slightly to let me through while maintaining his position. The door to room 3 was partially open, and I could see a third man inside speaking quietly on a phone, his back to me. I knocked gently on the doorframe. "Charts for room 3, I announced, trying to sound professional despite my pounding heart. Something about these men made my skin prickle with unease. The man inside turned, and the air seemed to crystallize around me. He was younger than I expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with sharp features and dark eyes that assessed me in a single, comprehensive glance. His suit probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, the fabric flowing over broad shoulders with the precision of expert tailoring. Unlike his men outside, he wore no earpiece, but carried an aura of authority that needed no technological enhancement. "Enter," he said, his voice surprisingly soft, but leaving no doubt it was a command. He ended his call without a goodbye and slipped the phone into his pocket. I stepped into the room, keeping my eyes lowered as I placed the charts on the small table. A subtle scent of expensive cologne mingled with the hospital's antiseptic smell. The room's occupant, an older man with silver hair and an oxygen tube, slept in the bed, monitors beeping steadily beside him. "You're new," the younger man stated, not a question, but an observation. "Just filling in," I replied, risking a glance upward. His eyes caught mine, dark, intelligent, and completely unreadable. A scar traced a thin line from the corner of his left eye to his temple, the only imperfection in what could have been the face of an Italian Renaissance painting. "Name?" Again, the soft voice that somehow filled the room. "Elena. Elena Foster." He nodded once, as if filing the information away. "Mr. Russo will need extra attention. His condition is delicate." The way he said it made me understand this wasn't just a medical concern, but something more significant. I glanced at the chart in my hands. Antonio Russo, 67, admitted for pneumonia and heart complications. The name tickled something in my memory, a newspaper headline perhaps, but I couldn't place it. "Of course," I said. "I'll let the nurses know." "You do that." He turned slightly toward the window, a clear dismissal. I backed toward the door, almost bumping into one of the suited men outside. As I turned to leave, I heard the soft-voiced man say, "Elena Foster," as if testing the name on his tongue. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of tasks and patience, but my mind kept returning to room 3 and its mysterious visitors. During my lunch break, I found myself searching Antonio Russo's name on my phone, and my blood chilled when the results appeared. Antonio Russo, suspected head of one of the city's most powerful crime families, had managed to avoid conviction for decades, despite numerous investigations, which meant the young man in the expensive suit was likely— "Elena, break's over," called Diane from the nurse's station. "Mr. Russo in 3 needs his medication." My hands trembled slightly as I prepared the prescribed dose. When I returned to room 3, only one guard remained outside, and inside, the young man sat beside the bed, reading something on a tablet. He didn't look up when I entered. I checked Mr. Russo's vitals, administered his medication, and adjusted his IV, hyper-aware of being watched. The silence in the room felt heavy, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor and the old man's labored breathing. As I finished and turned to leave, the young man spoke. "You have a child." I froze, my hand on the door handle. "Excuse me?" He gestured toward my wrist where a homemade friendship bracelet of multicolored yarn rested. Lily had made it for Mother's Day, not something you bought for yourself. I instinctively covered the bracelet with my other hand, a protective gesture that extended beyond the physical object to the child who had created it. Yes, a daughter. Something shifted in his expression, so subtle I might have imagined it. How old? The question seemed innocent enough, but alarm bells rang in my mind. Why would this man, this dangerous man, care about my daughter? 5, I answered, unable to formulate a reason to lie. He nodded again, that same economical movement. Difficult age. They ask many questions. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stood in a fluid motion that spoke of physical power carefully controlled. "Mr. Russo will be transferred to a private facility tomorrow. Make the necessary arrangements." It wasn't a request, and it wasn't directed to me. Not really. It was a statement of fact being delivered to the hospital through whatever representative happened to be present. Me. "I'll inform Dr. Weston," I said, eager to escape the room and the man's unsettling presence. As I turned to leave again, he said, "Ms. Foster." I paused without turning back. "Your bracelet is coming undone. You wouldn't want to lose it." Sure enough, several threads had loosened from Lily's careful knotting. I murmured a thank you and slipped out, the guard's eyes following me as I hurried back to the nurse's station. The rest of my shift passed without further interaction with Room 3's visitors. By the time I clocked out at 2 p.m., my body ached with fatigue, and all I wanted was to collect Lily and collapse on our couch for a few precious hours before my evening shift began. I remembered my promise of apple juice and stopped at the corner store. As I stood in line to pay, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up outside. My heart skipped. It looked exactly like the vehicle I'd glimpsed dropping off the men at the hospital earlier. The door opened, and one of the suited men emerged, scanning the store before holding the door. I ducked behind a display stand, watching as the young man from room 3 stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket with one hand, while speaking rapidly on his phone in what sounded like Italian. I waited until they entered the high-end restaurant next door, before paying for Lily's juice and hurrying out, clutching the plastic bag like a lifeline. Mrs. Patel greeted me with her usual warmth, though her eyes held concern. "You look exhausted, dear. Lily's been an angel. She's coloring now." I found my daughter at Mrs. Patel's kitchen table, tongue between her teeth in concentration as she worked on a drawing. "Mommy!" she exclaimed, launching herself at my legs. "Look what I made!" The drawing showed 3 figures: a small girl with brown curls, a woman with long hair, and a tall man with a crown. "It's you and me and the prince," she explained proudly. My heart squeezed. "It's beautiful, baby. Ready to go home?" As we walked the 2 blocks to our apartment, Lily skipped ahead, chattering about her morning with Mrs. Patel. I was so focused on her that I didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street from our building until we were almost at the entrance. My steps faltered, and I pulled Lily closer to my side, scanning the vehicle for any sign of its occupants. The windows were too darkly tinted to see inside, but I felt watched nonetheless. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Lily asked, sensing my tension. "Nothing, sweetie," I lied, ushering her inside and up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment. I double-checked the locks after we entered, peering through the blinds at the street below. The SUV remained, a silent sentinel. That night, after putting Lily to bed and preparing for my evening shift, I found myself checking the window every few minutes. The black vehicle had disappeared eventually, but my unease remained. I told myself I was being paranoid. There was no reason for anyone from the Russo family to take any interest in a hospital aide like me. Yet as I left for work, entrusting Lily to Mrs. Patel again, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my world, like the first tremors before an earthquake. I had no way of knowing then just how right that feeling was, or how completely my life was about to change, all because I'd delivered some charts to room 3 and caught the attention of Dante Russo, heir to his father's empire, and a man unaccustomed to being denied anything he desired, and somehow, inexplicably, what he now desired was me. The next morning, I dragged myself through our apartment, moving on autopilot after another double shift. My body ached from hours of lifting patients and rushing through hospital corridors. Lily sat at our small kitchen table, humming as she ate the cereal I'd poured with trembling hands. "Can I wear my blue dress today?" she asked, swinging her legs beneath the table. "Sure, baby." I managed a smile despite the exhaustion pressing down on me like a physical weight. "Mrs. Patel is taking you to the park, remember? The blue dress is perfect for that." I'd arranged another day with our neighbor because the hospital had called. Mr. Russo was being discharged to a private facility, and they needed extra hands. The pay was too good to pass up, though the thought of seeing those dark, assessing eyes again made my stomach tighten with apprehension. After dropping Lily off, I hurried to catch the bus to Mercy Hospital. The sky hung low and gray, threatening rain that would likely soak me on the walk home later. I leaned my forehead against the cool window, fighting to keep my eyes open as the city blurred past. The hospital seemed unusually quiet when I arrived. At the nurse's station, Diane greeted me with raised eyebrows. "You're on the Russo transfer?" she asked, lowering her voice. "Lucky you. They've taken over the entire East Wing for the discharge process." "Why all the security for a pneumonia patient?" I asked, though I knew the answer after my internet search yesterday. Diane shrugged. "Above my pay grade to question it, but word is the son's been making generous donations to the hospital foundation for years, the kind that get you a private elevator and no questions asked." She handed me a temporary badge for the East Wing access. "They requested you specifically, by the way." My heart stuttered. "Me? Why?" "No idea. But when Dante Russo asks for something, apparently our administration trips over themselves to provide it." She gave me a curious look. "What did you do to get his attention?" "Nothing," I whispered, the word barely audible. I just delivered some charts. Diane's expression turned serious. Be careful, Elena. There are rumors about that family. Not just the obvious ones. The son especially. People who enter their orbit tend to stay there, willingly or otherwise. With those comforting words ringing in my ears, I made my way to the East Wing. 2 security guards I didn't recognize checked my ID and the special badge before allowing me through doors that normally stood open. Room 3 had been transformed overnight. Medical equipment I'd never seen in our budget-constrained hospital surrounded Mr. Russo's bed. Fresh flowers filled every surface, their perfume almost masking the antiseptic smell. The old man himself looked marginally better, sitting propped up against pillows that definitely hadn't come from hospital supply. And beside the window, as I'd both feared and expected, stood Dante Russo. Today, he wore a charcoal suit that made his shoulders appear even broader. His dark hair, with just a touch of wave, was perfectly styled. He spoke quietly to a doctor I recognized as the hospital's chief of medicine, a man who rarely appeared on regular floors. Both men turned as I entered. The doctor nodded brusquely and left, closing the door behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Ms. Foster. Dante's eyes moved over me in that same assessing way. Thank you for coming. As if I'd had a choice. Good morning, Mr. Russo, I replied professionally. I'm here to assist with the transfer. Indeed. He gestured to a nurse I hadn't noticed, standing in the corner with a clipboard. Natalia will instruct you. The woman approached, elegant, competent, and clearly not regular hospital staff. She explained my role in transferring the elder Russo to a waiting ambulance, then to a private rehabilitation center. My job would be to monitor his vitals during the journey and assist the private medical team. The transfer fee has been arranged with your administration, Dante said when Natalia finished. You'll be compensated separately for your time. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning slightly. Excuse me, he said, stepping into the hallway. Natalia and I prepared Mr. Russo for transport, checking his IV lines and oxygen. The old man drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling occasionally in Italian. Once, he grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, his rheumy eyes suddenly clear and focused. Leia Bella, he rasped, then added something else I couldn't understand before Natalia gently removed his hand. What did he say? I asked. He thinks you're pretty, she translated with clinical detachment. And that his son thinks so too. My cheeks burned as I busied myself checking the oxygen tank. Natalia watched me with knowing eyes, but said nothing more. Dante returned as we finished preparations, his expression tight. We need to move now, he said, an edge to his voice that hadn't been there before. There's been a complication. The complication became clear as we wheeled Mr. Russo toward the private elevator. 2 police officers stood talking to the hospital administrator near the nurses' station. Dante positioned himself between the gurney and the officers, his body language casual, but his eyes vigilant. One of the officers glanced our way, and I felt Dante's hand at the small of my back, guiding me and the gurney smoothly into the elevator before the officer could approach. His touch burned through my scrubs, firm and proprietary. The doors closed on the officer's curious expression. Problems? Natalia asked quietly. Nothing concerning, Dante replied, though the tension in his jaw suggested otherwise. We descended to a loading bay I didn't know existed. A sleek, unmarked ambulance waited, back doors open, with more men in suits standing guard. Everything moved with practiced efficiency. Mr. Russo transferred to the ambulance, Natalia climbing in beside him, Dante issuing quiet instructions to his men. Then he turned to me. You'll ride with me, he said, nodding toward a familiar black SUV. I hesitated. I thought I was monitoring Mr. Russo's vitals during transport. Change of plans. Natalia will handle the medical aspects. His tone allowed no argument. We need to discuss your continued involvement in my father's care. The rational part of my brain screamed warnings. Get out. Make an excuse. Don't get into a vehicle with this man. But another part, the part desperate to keep my job, to pay rent, to feed Lily, silenced those warnings. The inside of the SUV smelled of leather and that same subtle cologne. One of the suited men closed the door behind us, and we pulled away from the hospital, the ambulance ahead of us and another black vehicle behind. "You have questions," Dante stated as we merged into traffic. I clutched my purse on my lap, acutely aware of the small can of pepper spray inside, utterly useless against this man and his resources. "Why me?" I finally asked. "There are dozens of more qualified nurses at Mercy." He studied me for a moment, his face unreadable. "My father responded positively to you. At his age and condition, comfort is priority." The explanation sounded reasonable, but something about it rang false. "And the police? Was that about your father's comfort too?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You've done your research on my family." "Just what anyone could find online," I said quickly, regretting my boldness. "The police periodically take interest in our business ventures," he said, dismissing years of investigations with a casual wave. "It's nothing unusual." We rode in silence for several minutes, the city giving way to more affluent suburbs. Finally, I gathered my courage. "Mr. Russo, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm just a nurse's aide. I have limited availability because of my daughter and—" "Lily," he interrupted. "Age 5, currently with your neighbor, Mrs. Patel, at Westside Park." Ice flooded my veins. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer directly. "Your current financial situation is precarious. 3 months behind on rent, outstanding medical bills from your daughter's tonsillectomy last year, student loans in default. Your car was repossessed 6 months ago." Each word hammered into me like nails sealing a coffin. He knew everything, had investigated every vulnerable aspect of my life. "What do you want from me?" My voice trembled despite my effort to control it. "I'm offering you employment, Ms. Foster. Private nursing aid to my father during his recovery. The salary would be—" He named a figure that made me gasp involuntarily, "plus accommodation for you and your daughter at the recovery facility's guest house." My mind reeled. The amount he offered would clear my debts within months, with enough left over to start a savings account, something I hadn't had in years. "Why?" I whispered. "You could hire anyone with that salary." Dante turned those dark eyes on me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in their depths, something hungry and possessive that sent a shiver down my spine. "My father trusts you. I trust his judgment." He leaned slightly closer, "and I prefer to keep things that interest me where I can see them." Before I could process that statement, the SUV stopped at an imposing gate. We'd arrived at what appeared to be a private estate, rather than a medical facility. Manicured grounds stretched in all directions, and at the end of a winding drive stood a mansion that belonged in a movie, not in this working-class city. "This is the recovery facility?" I asked incredulously. "My family's home," Dante corrected. "The East Wing has been converted for my father's care." The gates opened silently, and we proceeded up the drive. The ambulance had already arrived, and I could see attendants carefully moving Mr. Russo inside on a stretcher. "You haven't accepted my offer," Dante noted as the SUV stopped at the front entrance. "I need to think about it," I said, "and discuss it with my daughter." Something hard flashed in his expression. "Of course. Take today to consider. I'll have my driver return you to your apartment." Relief washed through me at not having to make an immediate decision. As I moved to exit the vehicle, his hand caught my wrist, not roughly, but with unmistakable strength. "Elena," he said, my name sounding foreign and exotic in his mouth. "I should warn you that I rarely extend offers twice." The implied threat hung between us. I pulled my hand away and stepped out into the sunlight, feeling his eyes on me until I entered the mansion. Inside was a flurry of activity centered around getting Mr. Russo settled. I followed a housekeeper through marble-floored hallways to a converted bedroom that contained more medical equipment than some hospital wards. Natalia directed staff with quiet efficiency, barely acknowledging my presence. For the next several hours, I worked alongside the private nurses, helping to establish Mr. Russo's care routine. The old man drifted in and out of sleep, occasionally gripping my hand and murmuring in Italian. Once, he pulled me closer and whispered in halting English, "My son, he watches you. Be careful, pretty one." By late afternoon, Mr. Russo was stable and resting comfortably. I checked my phone. 3 texts from Mrs. Patel asking when I'd collect Lily. With a start, I realized how late it had gotten. I explained the situation to Natalia, who nodded and led me back through the labyrinthine house. In the vast entrance hall, Dante stood talking with two men in expensive suits, different from his usual security detail. Their conversation stopped abruptly when we appeared. "Ms. Foster needs to return home," Natalia explained. Dante checked his watch. "Of course. Salvatore will drive you." One of the security guards materialized from a side room, car keys in hand. As I moved toward the door, Dante added, "I'll expect your answer by tomorrow morning." The drive home was silent, the guard, Salvatore, offering nothing beyond a curt nod when I thanked him upon arrival at my apartment building. I rushed upstairs to find Mrs. Patel and Lily in our living room, my daughter already in pajamas. "I'm so sorry," I began, but Mrs. Patel waved away my apology. "No trouble. Lily is always a joy." She gathered her things, then hesitated at the door. "Elena, a man came looking for you earlier. Very polite, but intimidating. He said he worked for someone named Russo." My blood chilled. "What did he want?" "He didn't say. Just asked if you lived here with your daughter. I didn't confirm anything." She touched my arm gently. "Be careful, dear. Men like that. They're not from our world." After she left, I double-checked all the locks and windows, drawing the blinds tightly closed. Lily was already half asleep on the couch, clutching her rabbit. "Did you have a nice day at the park?" I asked, carrying her to bed. She nodded sleepily. "Mrs. Patel bought me ice cream. And I saw the man from your stories." I froze in the act of tucking her blanket. "What man, sweetie?" "The prince," she mumbled, eyes drifting closed. "He was watching us at the park. He had men with him like guards, just like in your stories." Sleep claimed her before I could ask anything more. I stood in the darkened bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs. Dante had been watching my daughter at the park. The implication was clear. This wasn't just a job offer. It was something far more complicated and dangerous. I returned to the living room and pulled out the card Dante had pressed into my hand as I left the mansion. A single phone number was embossed on heavy cream cardstock. My fingers hovered over my phone, indecision paralyzing me. The salary he offered would change our lives. No more choosing between electricity and food. No more pawning possessions to make rent. Lily could have new clothes, better schools, maybe even college someday, but at what cost? I wasn't naive enough to believe Dante Russo's interest was purely professional. The way he looked at me, spoke to me. He wanted something more, and men like him were accustomed to getting what they wanted. A sharp knock at my door shattered my thoughts. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see one of Dante's guards holding a large manila envelope. "Delivery for Ms. Foster," he announced when I cracked the door, security chain still in place. "What is it?" I asked, not reaching for the envelope. "Mr. Russo thought these might help with your decision." Reluctantly, I accepted the package and locked the door behind me. Inside the envelope, I found documents, copies of all my outstanding bills, each stamped "paid in full" in red ink. Beneath them was a brochure for an exclusive private school, with Lily's name handwritten on the cover. The message couldn't be clearer. Dante Russo could give my daughter opportunities I never could. Or he could take away everything with the same ease. A smaller envelope contained a note in elegant handwriting. "The car will collect you at 8 a.m. Bring Lily. Her room is prepared." I sank onto the couch, the papers scattered around me, and for the second time that day felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. But this time, I knew I was already falling. Sleep eluded me that night. I sat by Lily's bed watching her peaceful face, wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. By dawn, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but my decision was made. Not that I'd had much choice. Dante Russo had engineered the situation perfectly, leaving me with no real alternatives. At precisely 7:30 a.m., I woke Lily and helped her dress in her nicest clothes. I'd packed our meager belongings into 2 small suitcases. All our lives fit into so little space. "Where are we going, Mommy?" she asked, eyes bright with excitement at the adventure. How to explain? "We're going to stay at a big house for a while. I'll be helping to take care of a sick man, and you'll have a beautiful room to play in." "Like a castle?" Her imagination immediately transformed our situation into one of her fairy tales. "Something like that," I forced a smile, zipping up her little backpack filled with treasured toys. At 7:55 a.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside our building. Not an SUV this time, but a luxury sedan with tinted windows. The driver, not Salvatore, but another impassive guard, loaded our bags while I handed Mrs. Patel a letter explaining our sudden departure and thanking her for everything. "Are you sure about this, Elena?" she whispered, concern etched in the lines around her eyes. "It's a good opportunity," I said, the words hollow even to my own ears. "Better pay, better schools for Lily." She squeezed my hand. "If you need anything at all, you call me." The drive to the Russo estate felt shorter in daylight. Lily pressed her face to the window, gasping at the sprawling mansions and manicured lawns as we entered the wealthy enclave. I kept my eyes forward, steeling myself for whatever awaited us. The massive iron gates opened as we approached, as if someone had been watching for our arrival. Probably they had been. The car circled a fountain before stopping at the front entrance, where Natalia waited on the steps. "Good morning," she greeted us with professional warmth. Her eyes softened slightly when she saw Lily. "And this must be the little one. Hello, dear." Lily edged closer to me, suddenly shy. "Hello," she whispered. "Come, I'll show you to your rooms." Natalia led us through the grand foyer, past priceless artwork and antique furniture that made me afraid to touch anything. "Mr. Russo is with his father at the moment, but wishes to see you once you're settled." Our rooms turned out to be a separate guest suite in the west wing, a sitting area, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom larger than our entire apartment. Lily's eyes widened at the canopy bed, with pink silk hangings, and the shelves filled with toys and books. "Is this all for me?" she breathed, reaching tentatively for a porcelain doll. "Of course," Natalia smiled. "Mr. Russo wanted you to feel comfortable." A chill ran through me at the thought of Dante selecting toys for my daughter, imagining what would please her. How much did he know about us? How long had he been watching before making his move? "Your uniforms are in the closet," Natalia continued, opening the door to reveal several sets of crisp white scrubs and a few casual outfits, all exactly my size. "Breakfast is served in the kitchen for staff at 6 a.m. Mr. Russo Sr. requires assistance at 7 a.m. daily. The rest of your schedule will be provided later today." She handed me a small device. "This is your security pass and communication device. You'll need it to access certain areas of the house. It also allows you to call for assistance if needed." It felt like being handed a collar and leash. "And Lily?" I asked. "What about her during the day?" "There's a play area adjacent to Mr. Russo's quarters. She can stay there while you work. Mrs. Caruso, the housekeeper, will check on her regularly. Once you're settled in your routine, we can discuss enrolling her in the private academy nearby." After Natalia left, I helped Lily explore her new room. Each discovery, a dollhouse, art supplies, a child-sized vanity, bringing squeals of delight. I should have been happy seeing her so excited, but all I felt was a deepening sense of being trapped in a beautiful cage. "Why don't you draw a picture while I get ready to meet my new patient?" I suggested, needing a moment alone to compose myself. In my room, I changed into one of the provided uniforms, noting with unease how perfectly it fit. The mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized, skin pale with stress, eyes wary and shadowed. I pulled my hair back into a neat ponytail and applied minimal makeup, trying to look professional and unremarkable. A soft knock at the suite door announced Natalia's return. "Mr. Russo is ready for you now. The little one can stay here. I'll have Mrs. Caruso bring her some breakfast." I knelt before Lily. "Mommy has to go work now. A nice lady will bring you food, and I'll be back to check on you soon. Be good, okay?" She nodded, already absorbed in arranging her new toys. I followed Natalia through a maze of corridors to the east wing, memorizing landmarks to find my way back. The elder Russo's suite had been transformed into a state-of-the-art medical facility, with monitors, oxygen equipment, and a hospital bed positioned near large windows overlooking the gardens. The old man slept peacefully, his breathing less labored than the previous day, and beside him, as always, stood his son. Dante wore no suit today, but dark slacks and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, revealing strong forearms and an expensive watch. The casual attire did nothing to diminish his aura of authority. "You came," he said simply, those dark eyes studying me with something like satisfaction. Did you doubt it? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. A slight smile curved his lips. Not really. How is Lily settling in? The casual mention of my daughter's name sent a spike of protective anger through me. She's fine. Overwhelmed by all the generosity. Children adapt quickly. He gestured toward his father. He had a restless night, but is stable now. Natalia will show you the care protocols. I moved to the bedside, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency despite my jangled nerves. His oxygen levels have improved, thanks to the specialized equipment. Dante watched me work, his gaze a tangible weight, and now, thanks to your care. For the next hour, Natalia walked me through Mr. Russo's medication schedule, physical therapy routine, and monitoring requirements. The work itself was straightforward, not so different from what I'd done at the hospital, just with better equipment and only one patient. Dante remained throughout the orientation, occasionally asking questions or suggesting adjustments to his father's care. His presence filled the room, making it difficult to concentrate. Finally, as Natalia was explaining the charting system, the old man stirred. "Dante?" he called weakly in his accented English. "Where is the angel?" Dante moved to his father's side. "She's here, Papa." He beckoned me closer. Mr. Russo's roomy eyes brightened when he saw me. "Ah, there she is. The pretty one." I smiled professionally. "Good morning, Mr. Russo. How are you feeling today? Better now?" He patted my hand with papery fingers. "You will stay, yes? My son has convinced you? I'll be helping with your care," I confirmed, acutely aware of Dante watching this exchange. Good. The old man's gaze drifted between his son and me, a knowing look in his faded eyes. "She reminds me of your mother, Dante. Same spirit in her eyes." Something flashed across Dante's face. Pain or anger, I couldn't tell which. "Rest now, Papa. Elena will be here when you wake." As the old man drifted back to sleep, Dante gestured for me to follow him. We stepped into an adjoining sitting room, and he closed the door partway, leaving it open enough to hear if his father called. "My father seems to have taken a particular liking to you," he said, pouring water from a crystal decanter. He offered me a glass, which I accepted gratefully, my throat suddenly dry. "He's a charming man," I replied neutrally. Dante laughed softly, the first time I'd heard the sound. "That's diplomatic. He can be difficult, demanding. Few nurses last more than a month with him." He studied me over the rim of his glass. "I think you'll be different, because I have no choice?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His expression hardened. "Everyone has choices, Elena. You chose to come here this morning, after you paid off my debts, and practically threatened my daughter's future. Not much of a choice. I offered opportunity, security, a better life for your child." He set down his glass. "Things her father failed to provide before he abandoned you both." The casual reference to my past stung like a slap. "You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you." He stepped closer, and it took all my willpower not to back away. "Elena born in Riverside, Foster, parents deceased. Nursing school dropout due to pregnancy. Left by Michael Chambers when your daughter was 2. Working double shifts at a hospital that doesn't value you. Living in an apartment you can barely afford." Each word hammered home how thoroughly he'd investigated my life, how vulnerable I truly was. "Why?" I whispered. "Why go to all this trouble for a nurse's aid?" Dante's eyes darkened. Perhaps I recognize value where others don't. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair that had escaped my ponytail. Or perhaps I simply take what interests me. Before I could respond, a child's voice called from the doorway. "Mommy?" I turned to see Lily standing there, a cookie clutched in her small hand, staring wide-eyed at Dante. Behind her, a flustered Mrs. Caruso appeared. "I'm sorry, sir." She ran ahead before I could stop her. Dante waved away the apology, his attention fixed on my daughter. For a terrifying moment, I feared how he might react to the interruption. To my surprise, he crouched down to Lily's eye level, his imposing presence softening. "Hello, Lily. I'm Dante. This is my house you're staying in." Lily studied him with a child's direct curiosity, then her eyes widened with recognition. "You're the man from Mommy's stories," she said with absolute certainty. The world seemed to stop. Dante's eyes flicked to mine, then back to Lily. "What stories are those?" he asked gently. "About the prince who's going to come save us," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "I saw you at the park yesterday. You look just like Mommy describes him." Time suspended itself as Lily's innocent words hung in the air. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. Dante remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable as he regarded my daughter. "Is that so?" he finally said, his voice gentle in a way I hadn't heard before. "And what else did your mommy say about this prince?" I stepped forward quickly. "Lily, sweetheart, Mrs. Caruso was showing you the kitchen, wasn't she? Why don't you go back with her and finish your cookie?" "But Mommy—" "Now please," I said firmly, relief flooding through me when Mrs. Caruso took Lily's hand and led her away. When we were alone again, I couldn't meet Dante's eyes. They're just bedtime stories, something to help her understand why her father left. "You made me a prince?" The question contained no mockery, only genuine curiosity. "Not you," I clarified hastily. "Her father. I told her he was a prince called away on a dangerous mission. Children need hope." Dante watched me with that intense gaze that seemed to see through all pretenses. "And now she thinks I'm this fairy tale prince?" A strange expression crossed his face, something almost vulnerable beneath the hardened exterior. "She's 5. She has an active imagination." I busied myself checking the medication chart, desperate to change the subject. "I should get back to your father. Elena—" The way he said my name stopped me in my tracks. "We've scheduled an assessment for Lily at Westbrook Academy tomorrow morning. The headmistress is a family friend." The abrupt shift caught me off guard. "Tomorrow? That's very sudden." "The sooner she starts, the easier her adjustment will be." His tone had returned to business-like efficiency. "A driver will take you both at 9. It wasn't a request, just like everything else in this new life. A pronouncement from on high that I was expected to follow. I nodded stiffly and returned to the elder Russo's bedside, feeling Dante's eyes on my back until he finally left the room. The rest of the day passed in a blur of medications, measurements, and monitoring. I checked on Lily frequently, finding her thoroughly enchanted with her new surroundings. Mrs. Caruso had shown her the gardens, introduced her to the kitchen staff who spoiled her with treats, and set up a small art station where she contentedly drew pictures of castles and princes. By evening, Mr. Russo's condition had improved enough for him to sit up and eat a light dinner. He insisted I join him, patting the chair beside his bed. "Tell me about yourself, Angel," he requested, his accent thicker when he was tired. I gave him the sanitized version of my life. Nursing school, hospital work, raising Lily. He listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed a sharp mind despite his frail appearance. "And the father of your little one?" he finally asked, eyes shrewd. "Where is he?" "He left when she was 2, I answered simply. The old man made a disgusted sound. "A man who abandons his blood is no man at all." He reached for my hand. "My Dante, he understands family, loyalty. The most important things." I remained silent, unwilling to contradict a sick man, but unable to reconcile his words with what I knew about the Russo family's business. "My son is not an easy man," Mr. Russo continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "Life has made him hard, but beneath—" he tapped his chest, "a good heart. He needs someone to remind him of this." Before I could respond to this uncomfortable line of conversation, Dante himself appeared in the doorway. "Don't tire yourself, Papa. Elena has had a long day as well." Mr. Russo waved dismissively. "We are just getting acquainted. Go. Take care of business. Leave the angel with me." Something passed between father and son. A silent communication built on decades of understanding. Dante inclined his head slightly. 1 hour, then rest. His eyes met mine briefly before he departed. The old man chuckled. "He worries too much. Now, tell me about your little girl." Talking about Lily was easy, and Mr. Russo proved to be an engaged listener, smiling at stories of her antics and asking thoughtful questions about her interests. By the time Natalia came to administer his evening medications, I found myself genuinely enjoying his company. "You have been good for my spirits today," he told me as I prepared to leave. "Come early tomorrow, yes? We will have breakfast together." I returned to our suite to find Lily already bathed and in pajamas, courtesy of Mrs. Caruso. She bounced excitedly on her new bed, eager to tell me about every moment of her day. "And Mr. Dante showed me the horses," she exclaimed. "He said maybe I can learn to ride when I'm bigger." I froze in the middle of brushing her hair. "Mr. Dante took you to see horses?" "When?" "After my snack. Mrs. Caruso was folding laundry, and he came and asked if I wanted to see something special." Her eyes shone. "They're so big, Mommy. But Mr. Dante said they're gentle giants." Anger and fear twisted in my stomach. He had taken my daughter somewhere without my knowledge or permission, set boundaries with her that weren't his to set. The possessiveness I'd sensed from the beginning extended to Lily, too. After tucking her in, I paced our suite, torn between confronting Dante and keeping my head down. This position, this place, it all depended on his goodwill, but my daughter was the one line no one could cross. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door to find Dante standing there, holding a leather portfolio. "May I come in?" he asked, the politeness at odds with the commanding presence. I stepped aside reluctantly, leaving the door open. "Lily told me you took her to see the stables today." If he noticed my tone, he gave no indication. She expressed interest in animals. I thought she would enjoy it. "You should have asked me first." His eyebrow raised slightly. "She was perfectly safe. Salvatore accompanied us." "That's not the point." I folded my arms. "She's my daughter. I decide where she goes and with whom." Something darkened in his expression, a flicker of the dangerous man beneath the civilized veneer. Then it cleared, replaced by that impenetrable calm. "You're right. I apologize." The easy capitulation surprised me so much, I momentarily lost my train of thought. Dante placed the portfolio on the coffee table. "These are the enrollment papers for Westbrook. They require a parent's signature." I sat down and opened the folder, skimming the prestigious academy's materials. The tuition figure made me gasp. "It's taken care of," Dante said before I could speak. "Consider it part of your compensation package." "It's too much," I whispered, overwhelmed by the opportunities being handed to my daughter. Opportunities I could never have provided. "Nothing is too much for a child's education." He sat opposite me, his presence filling the small sitting area. My mother believed that above all else. The mention of his mother, something personal amid our carefully professional interactions, caught my attention. "She's no longer living?" A shadow crossed his face. "She died when I was 12. Cancer." "I'm sorry." The simple condolence felt inadequate. He nodded once, accepting the sympathy, but clearly uncomfortable with it. "Sign where indicated. The driver will have everything else Lily needs for tomorrow." I signed the papers, each scratch of the pen cementing our new reality. When I finished, Dante gathered the documents and stood to leave. "Thank you for today," he said formally. "My father hasn't been this alert in weeks." "He's a fascinating man," I replied honestly. Something like pride flickered in Dante's eyes. He built everything we have from nothing. Came to this country with empty pockets and a pregnant wife. He paused at the door. "There's a call button beside your bed if you need anything during the night. The house is secure, but I understand this is all new for you." The reminder of security and the implicit suggestion that we were being monitored sent a chill through me. "We'll be fine." He hesitated, looking like he wanted to say more, then simply nodded. "Good night, Elena." After he left, I checked on Lily one more time, finding her sound asleep surrounded by new stuffed animals. In my own room, I discovered a note on my pillow, written in that same elegant handwriting. "The prince in the story, did he have a name?" I crumpled the paper, unsettled by the question and what it might mean. That night, I dreamed of dark eyes watching me from shadows, of golden cages, and of a little girl calling a dangerous man Prince. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Lily was beside herself with excitement about her new school, twirling in the uniform that had mysteriously appeared in her closet overnight, a pleated skirt, navy blazer with the school crest, and a red tie that I struggled to knot properly. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I told her, smoothing her curls. "Remember to be polite to the headmistress." "Will Mr. Dante come with us?" she asked, surprising me. "No, just a driver." I studied her expression. "Would you want him to come?" She nodded solemnly, He knows everything. He told me all about the school yesterday. There's a music room with a real piano and a playground with a castle. The ease with which Dante had charmed my daughter troubled me. Children were excellent judges of character, yes, but they were also easily impressed by attention and gifts, both of which he had supplied in abundance. As promised, a driver arrived at 9. Not one of the usual security guards, but a grandfatherly man who introduced himself as Vincent, and immediately won Lily over by presenting her with a small bouquet of daisies. "For your first day of school, little miss." The luxury sedan had a booster seat already installed, another detail Dante had anticipated. As we pulled away from the mansion, I caught a glimpse of him watching from an upstairs window, his tall figure silhouetted against the glass. Westbrook Academy exceeded even the brochure's descriptions. Elegant brick buildings surrounded a verdant campus where uniformed children played and studied. The headmistress, Dr. Reynolds, greeted us warmly, clearly aware of our connection to the Russo family. "Mr. Russo speaks very highly of Lily's potential," she said, leading us through hallways decorated with student artwork. "We have an excellent kindergarten program that will prepare her for our accelerated curriculum." The assessment went smoothly. Lily charmed the teachers with her enthusiasm and demonstrated reading skills beyond her age group, the result of countless bedtime stories and our little home lessons. "She'll do wonderfully here," Dr. Reynolds assured me as we completed the final paperwork. "We can accommodate your unusual schedule, Ms. Foster. Lily can remain in after-school programs until you're available to collect her." As we walked back to the car, Lily clutching a Westbrook teddy bear, she looked up at me with shining eyes. "Can I start today?" "Monday," I told her, squeezing her hand. "That gives us the weekend to get everything ready." Vincent held the door open, a warm smile crinkling his weathered face. "Mr. Russo has requested you join him for lunch upon your return," he informed me. "Mrs. Caruso will look after the little miss." More commands disguised as invitations. I was beginning to understand the rhythm of life with the Russos, but as I looked at Lily's excited face, at the opportunities unfolding before her, I wondered if the golden cage was truly so terrible, at least for her. When we returned to the mansion, Mrs. Caruso whisked Lily away to show her new art supplies that had arrived that morning. I changed into my uniform and made my way to the dining room where Vincent had indicated Dante would be waiting. The space was intimidating, a long mahogany table that could seat 20, crystal chandeliers overhead, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the manicured gardens. Dante sat at the head, reviewing documents spread before him. He stood when I entered, gesturing to the chair at his right. "How was Westbrook?" he asked, closing the folder as a staff member appeared to serve our lunch. "Impressive," I admitted, taking my seat. "Lily loved it. She wanted to start today." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Eager, like her mother." I let the personal observation pass without comment. "Your father is expecting me after lunch. How was his morning?" "Improved. The new medication seems to be working." Dante studied me over the rim of his water glass. Dr. Reynolds called. She was quite taken with Lily. Of course she had reported directly to him. Everyone in this world seemed to. She's a bright child. With the right opportunities, she could go far. He set down his glass with deliberate precision. Harvard, perhaps. My alma mater. The casual mention of his Ivy League education was clearly meant to remind me of the gulf between our worlds. What he could provide that I never could. I focused on my salad, unwilling to give him the satisfaction of my reaction. "My father has asked about your nursing degree," Dante continued, changing tactics. "Why you never completed it?" I set down my fork, appetite vanishing. Life got in the way. Pregnancy, then abandonment. His blunt assessment stung. "You could finish now. We have connections with several universities. Night classes, online courses, whatever would fit around your schedule here." The offer caught me off guard. "Why would you do that?" "My father values education, and qualified private nurses are difficult to find." He said it matter-of-factly, as if offering to invest thousands in my education was a simple business decision. "And what would you expect in return?" I asked, because nothing with Dante Russo came without strings. His dark eyes held mine. "Loyalty, commitment to my father's care, the same things I expect from all who work for my family." Something in his tone suggested deeper meanings beneath the simple words. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it with a frown. "Business," he explained curtly. We'll continue this conversation later. My father is awake and asking for you. I found the elder Russo sitting in an armchair by the window, looking more alert than the previous day. Natalia finished adjusting his IV and nodded to me before departing. "Ah, my angel arrives," he greeted me, patting the seat beside him. "Tell me about the school. Is it good enough for your little one?" I described Westbrook as I helped him with his breathing exercises, warming to his genuine interest in Lily. For a man with his reputation, Antonio Russo showed surprising tenderness when speaking of children. "I had a daughter once," he revealed when I mentioned Lily's love of dance. "Many years ago. She would have been close to your age now." "I didn't know Dante had a sister." Pain flickered across the old man's face. "She died with her mother. Car accident. Dante was 12, Sophia just 7. He sighed heavily. "It broke something in my boy that day. He became different." The revelation illuminated something about Dante, the hardness I'd sensed beneath his controlled exterior, perhaps born from that childhood tragedy. "I'm sorry for your loss. Life gives and takes." He reached for my hand. "But now, perhaps it gives again." I see how he watches you. Uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, I redirected to his physical therapy routine. For the next hour, I focused entirely on his medical needs, avoiding any further personal revelations. As afternoon faded into evening, I checked on Lily and found her happily engaged with Mrs. Caruso, learning to make pasta by hand in the massive kitchen. Flour dusted her cheeks, and she beamed when she saw me. "Look, Mommy, I'm helping with dinner." Mrs. Caruso smiled warmly. She has talented hands, a natural. I kissed the top of Lily's head. "I need to finish with Mr. Russo. Will you be okay here a bit longer?" "Uh-huh. We're making special pasta for Mr. Dante too." The innocent comment reminded me how quickly my daughter was adapting to this new environment and the people in it. I returned to Mr. Russo's suite with an unsettled feeling that only intensified when I found Dante there, reviewing his father's charts. "Oxygen levels have improved significantly," he noted without looking up. "Your care is making a difference. The medications are working," I corrected, uncomfortable with the praise. Mr. Russo chuckled from his bed. So modest, this one. Not like the other nurses who take credit for every small improvement. I busied myself with evening medications, acutely aware of Dante's presence as he spoke quietly with his father in Italian. The old man replied animatedly, occasionally glancing my way with a sly expression that needed no translation. After helping Mr. Russo settle for the night, I gathered my things to return to our suite. Dante followed me into the hallway. "Walk with me," he said. Not quite a command, but not quite a request either. He led me through a door I hadn't noticed before, onto a terrace overlooking the gardens. The evening air carried the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like fallen stars. "My father seems quite attached to you," Dante observed, leaning against the stone balustrade. "He's not usually so receptive to new people. He's a charming man. I kept a careful distance between us." "When he wishes to be." Dante studied the darkening sky. "He told you about my sister and mother." It wasn't a question. "Yes. I'm sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago." His voice held no emotion, but his knuckles whitened where he gripped the stone. "My father became overly protective after that. Of me, of our family, of what we've built." "Is that why you became—" I hesitated. "What I am?" His mouth curved in a humorless smile. "Perhaps." We stood in silence for several moments, the gulf between our worlds seeming both vast and insignificant in the growing darkness. "I've arranged for your remaining possessions to be collected from your apartment," Dante finally said. "The lease has been terminated." The casual announcement of another decision made without my input ignited a spark of rebellion. "You had no right. It was a formality. You won't be returning there." His certainty fueled my anger. "You can't just—" "I can," he interrupted, turning to face me fully. "I can provide everything you and Lily need. Better than that decrepit apartment. Better than struggling for minimum wage. Better than telling fairy tales about princes who don't exist. And what do you get from this arrangement?" I demanded. "Why us? Why me?" Something flashed in his eyes. Hunger, possession, maybe even vulnerability. From the moment I saw you in that hospital room, I knew you were different. The way you stood your ground, the way you protected your daughter like a lioness with nothing to lose. He stepped closer, and I held my ground despite the urge to retreat. My world is dangerous, Elena. I need people I can trust, people with loyalty, people with something to protect. His gaze burned into mine. I can give Lily everything: education, security, opportunities, and I can give you back your dream, your nursing degree, a career, financial independence. In exchange for what? My voice barely rose above a whisper. Stay, care for my father. And... He hesitated, something almost vulnerable crossing his expression. Let me be part of your lives. The request hung between us, far more complex than the simple words suggested. This wasn't just employment he was offering. It was entrenchment in his world, his family, his life. Before I could respond, a small voice called from the doorway. Mommy? Mrs. Caruso said dinner's ready. Lily stood there in her flour-dusted clothes, looking between us with curious eyes. Dante's expression softened instantly. Did you finish making the pasta, little one? She nodded proudly. It's shaped like butterflies. Farfal, he corrected gently. My favorite. Lily beamed, then turned to me. Can we eat with Mr. Dante and his daddy tonight? I hesitated, but Dante answered before I could. My father would like that very much. He's been asking to meet you. As Lily skipped away to tell Mrs. Caruso, Dante's eyes met mine again. You don't have to decide everything tonight. Take time, observe. See what life could be for both of you here. That night, after a surprisingly warm family dinner where Mr. Russo delighted Lily with stories of Italy and his childhood, I tucked my daughter into bed with conflicting emotions swirling through me. Do you like it here? I asked her, smoothing back her curls. Uh-huh. It's like a real castle. She yawned. And Mr. Dante is nice. He promised to teach me Italian words tomorrow. Did he now? I kept my tone light despite the presumption. Her eyes drifted closed, and he said maybe someday I can call him Papa. My heart stuttered. When did he say this? When we saw the horses. She snuggled deeper into her pillows. He said he's not a prince like in your stories, but he could be a papa. I'd like that, I think. Long after Lily fell asleep, I sat by her bed, watching her peaceful face and weighing impossible choices. The life Dante offered glittered with opportunity and security. Everything I'd ever wanted for my daughter. But it came with invisible chains, golden and comfortable, but chains nonetheless. A soft knock at the door roused me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Dante standing there, his usual commanding presence somehow subdued. Is she asleep? He asked quietly. I nodded, stepping into the hallway and pulling the door nearly closed. She told me what you said to her, about being her papa someday. He didn't deny it. Children need fathers. And what about what I need? I challenged, finding courage in maternal protectiveness. What do you need, Elena? His voice dropped lower, the question intimate in the quiet hallway. Freedom. Choice. Not to be owned. Is that what you think this is? He gestured to the opulent surroundings. Ownership? Isn't it? You've arranged everything. My job, Lily's school, our living situation. You've made every decision, because I can provide what you need. A hint of frustration colored his words. What is freedom worth if you're constantly struggling to survive? What good is choice when all options lead to hardship? That's not for you to decide. Then decide, he challenged, stepping closer. Choose. Stay because you want to, not because you have to. I'll tear up the employment contract tomorrow. You can leave with Lily, return to your old life. His eyes held mine. Or you can accept what I'm offering. Not just security and opportunity, but a family. For both of you. The bold proposition hung between us, its implications staggering. This powerful, dangerous man was offering not just protection, but himself. A ready-made family to replace what we'd lost. I don't know you, I whispered. You can, given time. His hand lifted, fingers brushing my cheek with surprising gentleness. I'm not the prince from your stories, Elena. I'm flesh and blood, with all the flaws that entails, but I protect what's mine, always. The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it awakened something I'd buried since Lily's father left, the longing to be chosen, protected, valued. 3 months, I finally said. We stay for 3 months while your father recovers. No contracts, no obligations beyond that. Then I decide. Satisfaction gleamed in his dark eyes. 3 months. He lifted my hand, pressing his lips to my knuckles in an old-world gesture that sent warmth cascading through me. Buonanotte, Elena. As he walked away, I touched the spot his lips had brushed, knowing that whatever decision I ultimately made, my life had already irrevocably changed the moment I stepped into room 3 and met Dante Russo's eyes. 3 months seemed both an eternity and an instant to determine our fate. But watching his retreating figure, I suspected Dante already knew what my decision would be. And perhaps, in the deepest part of my heart, so did I.